Okay, let's continue examining this idea that sharks might enjoy affection from humans. The concept that sharks, once they become accustomed to our presence, actually learn to enjoy hanging out with us is a pretty fun idea, to me at least. And I will admit that I want to believe that it's a real thing. However, despite my personal feelings, I'm going to tell you only what I saw and nothing more when I had my opportunity to go diving with Jim and his crew. For whatever reason, during our trip, none of these legendary tiger sharks that are known by name and are referred to as players showed up on our trip. So instead, I was witnessing new tiger sharks that started by hanging out cautiously around the edges and not approaching us, working their way up to being intrigued enough to come in and investigate the divers and the source of the smell of the fish. No one on this trip is going to deny that the smell of the fish is used to get the sharks interested in the first place. What we're debating is, once sharks come in and learn that they can receive affection, is that affection enough of a reason for them to keep coming back? These particular tiger sharks did not hang out enough to provide a convincing argument that they were there for the affection, although they certainly didn't seem to shy away from the affection when they encountered it. But tiger sharks weren't the only sharks we encountered, and a couple of nurse sharks that the divers are familiar with showed up, and they provided a very interesting perspective on this entire subject. Nurse sharks are capable of something called buccal pumping, which allows them to be stationary while still pumping water over their gills in order to extract oxygen. This characteristic allowed me to witness a rather interesting behavior of a nurse shark that was familiar with Jim's crew. This shark actually swam up to the crew member and stopped, in a manner that would tempt one to say that it was waiting expectantly. Expecting to be fed, you might be thinking to yourself. That's fair to wonder, but then it's also only fair to state that Jim and his crew do not feed these sharks. I repeat, never on this week-long trip did I witness sharks being fed. It's worth noting, however, that nurse sharks are capable of sucking in their food. So one could argue that they were getting a little bit of food through the openings in the crate by going up to it and sucking on it. But again, the specific nurse sharks I'm referring to were not going up to the crate, and instead spent a considerable amount of time receiving affection. Some of the more convincing moments are coming up right now. For example, is it just me, or did this nurse shark's head rise following his hand? And the other thing I thought was pretty interesting is that this shark didn't leave once the diver wasn't paying attention to it. It didn't immediately go and try to find the food. Instead, it patiently waited, even while the diver was distracted, and the diver returned to giving affection.
All right, tell me about those nurse sharks.
Nurse sharks were coming in for affection. They would hang out right underneath my knees. I was kneeling in the sand there and come right up and just lay down on the bottom and wait for me to come rub the heads. love when you rub them right on top of the heads here. They won't move as long as you're rubbing their head.
And now that those sharks know you, if you went down there by yourself without a bait box, would they come up to you?
Yeah, I think so. Yep, they've got a couple of spots they hang out and lay down. I would probably go to them. If I just sit in the stand, they would kind of hang out around me but not come right up close.
Call this nurse shark behavior what you want. It was certainly interesting to witness. And it's not the first time I've seen this. A few years ago, I was diving alone and came across a nurse shark that also was alone. It swam right up to me. Was it conditioned having been fed by someone else at some other place and time? Or is this a characteristic of nurse sharks? So far we've discussed two possibilities about why sharks might hang out with divers. The scent of food, which with some dive operators does come with a food reward, and affection. But those aren't the only two possibilities, and we'll discuss a third possibility next time.